From Informa Tech Target, I'm David Essex, and this is Enterprise Apps Unpacked. Many of the applications we use the most are just digitized ways of doing the same things we used to do on paper, like typing words into a document or putting numbers on a spreadsheet, then performing calculations or filling out HR forms and passing them along. But some digital technology enables capabilities that weren't even possible before by bringing certain people and businesses together and enabling them to exchange hard-to-find information and conduct transactions. The Internet itself is a prominent example, but so are the many new applications it enables. This seems especially true of apps that act as brokers between buyers and sellers who might never have done business because the transaction isn't worth setting up in the first place, or can't be completed while the window of opportunity remains open. I thought of this kind of software when I heard about Liquid Donate. Technically, Liquid Donate makes software for reverse logistics, a key part of the supply chain for returning products to the manufacturer or distributor, or forwarding it for servicing, refurbishment, recycling, or just disposal. It's a way for manufacturers to get additional value from returned or overstocked inventory, or disposing of it in environmentally appropriate ways. What makes Liquid Donate different is who these so-called unsellable products go to and the kind of value that's created. The recipients are nonprofit organizations Liquid Donate has vetted. They get goods that fill needs they've identified, while donors spend less to move or dispose of their products and usually get a tax write-off. The Liquid Donate software also provides the paperwork needed to verify and record the donations for accounting and tax purposes. Time magazine editors were so impressed they named Liquid Donate one of the best inventions of 2025. Today's guest is Asia Aziz, Liquid Donate's Chief Technology Officer. She explained how the software works, where it fits in the reverse logistics ecosystem, such as warehouse management systems and e-commerce sites, the role of AI, and the constraints that had to be built in to guard against fraud, waste, and abuse and assure positive outcomes for donors and recipients. We also talked about the early decision to use APIs so the software could plug into a wide variety of supply chain and e-commerce platforms, and the challenges of harmonizing the different platforms' workflows. Asia might be the CTO, but she's a software engineer at heart, having written her first program at age 7, eventually getting a computer science degree at the University of Maryland and a master's in Carnegie Mellon's program for tech entrepreneurs. We talked about her vocational journey, her passion for using technology to solve social problems, and future sustainability applications that she envisions. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Enterprise Apps Unpacked for the real story on the software that runs your business. Aisha, thanks very much for coming on the podcast today.
Of course. Happy to meet you, David.
So people who work in supply chain management might think of Liquid Donate, your company, as a reverse logistics provider, of technology for reverse logistics, but it's certainly one with a unique purpose. Before we get more into the sort of unique approach you have, can you explain for our listeners why reverse logistics is such a problem for retailers and I guess manufacturers to some degree and others who have complex supply chains?
Of course. So if you look into this, reverse logistics is by itself very operationally complex. If you imagine fulfillments, for example, the items are with you. It's at your warehouse. You have total control of what you want to do with these items, how it gets ordered, how it gets shipped. But with reverse logistics, these items are actually at the customer's house. It's with the customers. It's a very delicate situation that could affect your brand reputation as well. So let's just take one example. A furniture. You ordered a furniture, it gets shipped in a box. The customer opens the box, set it up, and realize it's too big for my house. Or the color is a different undertone than I expected, and it doesn't fit the wood color in your house kind of thing. And at this point, it's already set up. You can't just tell them, hey, can you please take it off, put it back in the box, ship it back. So it's really a really delicate situation here where you understand it's already set up, but you still need to figure out how to get it out of the house for the users. So it's expensive. You technically need to have one delivery person, a 3PL, pick these items up, and it can't be sent all the way back to your warehouse. It's so expensive. Imagine having a table. If you have like a warehouse in Nevada, the table is in New York, you can't just send them all the way back to Nevada. It just doesn't make sense operationally, even in terms of fees. So this is an example for big and bulky where it's very complex. You need to figure out what to do with the items, and it could be anywhere in the US, for example. And then if you look into another perspective with t-shirts, we have all bought like a t-shirt online. Sometimes we look at a t-shirt and you're like, hey, this is medium, this is large. It's $30, for example. You'll buy two and figure out which one fits you better and you return the other. So imagine a $30 t-shirt. And when the consumer is returning that $30 t-shirt, it has to travel all the way from New York to, let's say again, Nevada. So there's shipping fees costs there. And then there's a receiving cost at the warehouse. If you're a smaller retailer, you're paying a 3PL to actually handle it. There's a storage fee there. And then if you really want to open the box, there's also operational costs there. And in the end, some of these are actually treated as an afterthought. They are put at the back burner, at the back of the warehouse somewhere where no one is really accountable there. And in the end, these items actually goes straight to the landfill. We've seen data that proves this year, like 80% of returned items. It's crazy. 80% of returned items are actually ended up in the landfill each year. Can you imagine that? But you can see, like, it's very complex because it becomes a decision problem. It involves multiple systems, multiple teams, customer service, fulfillment center, 3PL, shipping carrier, and multiple approvals as well. And there's little ownership here because they are not incentivized to actually make it better. This has also been proven with the upcoming EPR regulation where the government they want these manufacturers and producers to be accountable for the full life cycle of what they put into the world. So this is becoming more of a problem now. And reverse logistics becomes a legally accountable infrastructure to the retailers as well.
So what inspired you and the other Liquid Donate founders to address this particular market, and what was the opportunity you were seeing?
Okay, so I'm not the founder. I joined, so the founder is actually Disney. I joined like a year after as a founding engineer, and now I'm the CTO at Liquid Donate. But really what I see when I heard about Liquid Donate is really massive inefficiency hit in plain sight. We have retailers that are spending billions of dollars really handling these unsellable goods. And on the other hand, you're seeing nonprofits who are really struggling to get basic supplies. The supply existed, the demand actually existed, but really the systems that are connecting them does not exist. So instead of donations becoming like a manual decision that you have, these donations become an automated workflow, similar to how you return to warehouse, similar to how you resell them. We want donation to be like an infrastructure, a workflow, a standard disposition workflow that people really don't. It's not an afterthought. So really, I want to share one example. We have like a very recent donation with Kenmore. And there's like this, imagine someone just receiving a refrigerator, a returned refrigerator that would otherwise be landfill. I really want to quote a feedback that we receive. It says, I sometimes don't think regular everyday people understand that this is epic for some of our families that struggle. It says as if they just won the lottery. It's easy to see how a simple appliance could have a really life-changing impact. And it really makes us feel better. Like every day it makes us feel good to really be doing this for the nonprofits and really improving the reverse logistic for the retailers as well.
So you mentioned a benefit to many people, but there are several ways I noticed in reading about Liquid Donate that the system either provides benefits in value or saves money for different participants in the return flow of these goods that usually can't be sold realistically. Could you
Mhm.
give an outline of what the top level benefits and savings are and who they go to?
I think in terms of the retailers, really we lower the reverse logistics costs. Like I mentioned earlier, from the whole flow, lower shipping label, no receiving fee, no storage fee, no operational fees there. And then with all that lower, you are also the retailers, the brands are also getting tax deduction from the donation receipts, and really better data visibility. Like, where does it go to? If you ask some of the retailers right now, where did this return go to? They have no idea. It's somewhere in the warehouse. So we actually have better data visibility and traceability. We know exactly where these items are returned to, if it goes to which nonprofit, and really stronger ESG and sustainable reporting. To be honest, nonprofits, like on the nonprofit side, they actually gain reliable access to really good, usable, needed goods. So yeah.
Yeah, lots of benefits all around. I read a great interview with you on the website of the Serious Insights analyst firm, and it goes into detail about the kind of constraints that are built into the software to ensure good outcomes for donors and recipients. What are some examples of the sort of constraints that you build in there?
So one of the things is very important is we have to understand, for example, not all nonprofits can receive big items. For example, some nonprofits are like they have a small office space, so really like matching them to the right nonprofit and making sure that we are actually matching the items to the nonprofits who actually need them. So for example, let's say t-shirts, for example, we want to match them to maybe nonprofits that handle unhoused community. So we want to make sure we are also not creating like more waste, like just matching some items to any nonprofits. That doesn't make sense. So we have constraints there where we make sure the recipient are also the right recipient, and also like in terms of operational wise, also like just scheduling the pickup between the retailers, between the consumer and the nonprofits as well, making sure they are both available on the same time for pickups and for receiving of the items. So there are some constraints there that we put in to make sure we're really like these items are actually going to good use.
I see. So I saw that you also have features for the data and documentation that's needed for things like proving chain of custody, some auditing, I think receipts for donors, and also ESG reporting. Can you drill down a little bit into those features?
Of course, we keep track of all items, all donations, all logistics, even the miles traveled or even saved in all of our donations. And we also connect our retailers and nonprofits in a way that our nonprofit actually has a mobile app that allows them to give direct feedback to the retailer on the items that they received. So in terms of fraud as well, so if you imagine the way for like a traditional way of doing it is items are received at the warehouse, they open the box, check the box, are these the correct items, put it aside, which is very expensive. In our case, our nonprofit actually has a mobile app because they are opening the box because they are giving it to the recipient. So they are opening the box. We make it very easy where they can just scan the tracking number. We know exactly what items should be in there, and they'll be able to take pictures directly. So we have that log as well that is sent to the retailer for them to see what exactly are sent to the nonprofits. And from all of this, we ensure that we are actually putting in the right fair market value for the donation receipts as well. And in the end, we also handle the whole operation of once the nonprofits receive the item, we automatically produce a donation receipt to the nonprofits sign them, and we send them back to the retailers. So the retailers don't have to really worry anything about that. Yeah, it's all handled via our system.
So far, we've mostly been talking about, I guess, what you would call deterministic states where there's no ambiguity and the workflows are predictable. I think that's what we've been talking about. But you also have an AI layer on top that basically helps with what you might call judgment calls. What parts of the process is the AI involved in?
Even though the decision and I would say like the disposition and outcome is predictable, we still need to do some judgment calls. I would say AI, in this case, we actually fit them into the parameters. For example, we can say things like, we want to make sure nonprofits are receiving items like good usable items. If it's a broken glass, we don't want to send that to the nonprofit. So really, we actually put an AI in our image layer as well, so that, for example, when you're returning the item, you can say things are damaged, for example, and then you take a picture of the damaged item. And then our AI can determine whether is this still donatable, is this still usable, and it fits into the parameter where it decides this actually goes to donation, this actually goes to recycling. Or if it's perfectly good, it's not open, the tag is still there, it's still in a plastic, maybe route it to the warehouse so that it can be resold. Our AI, we actually have our AI there where it determines the condition, and we also have an AI where we determine the category of the items because, like I said earlier, where we want to make sure it matches to the right nonprofit as well. So determining the category of the product because that's not always available in all e-commerce solution, and also matching it to the nonprofits who actually need them. We also have algorithms where we make sure we are routing it to the closest nonprofit and making sure it's equitable to all our nonprofits as well. So there's a couple here and there where it makes sense.
You made a design decision to rely on application programming interfaces so Liquid Donate can integrate with other e-commerce, supply chain, and logistics platforms. Can you talk more about the APIs, including some of the brands, I guess, of systems that they work with, and explain where Liquid Donate in general sort of plugs in or fits within the software ecosystem that a typical retailer would have?
So as is, retailers have a kind of a complex technology stack. They have an e-commerce platform. One example would be Shopify. They have a return management solution that returns that handles their returns. They have a warehouse management system that handles their inventory, 3PL systems that handle delivery, and they also have customer service system that really handles all the communication. As we do not intend to really replace the systems, but what we really do is we want to connect them. We want to meet the retailers where they are at and becoming the donation infrastructure to these retailers. So with this API design, it allows us to really integrate directly into their existing workflow. So donation becomes a seamless disposition option. So let's say for e-commerce, Shopify, we actually have, so let's say they only have Shopify e-commerce, we become their return solution. If they have an RMX, we become their donation, just their donation workflow. So we try to really be intentional where we're at.
I see. Kind of complementary, I guess. You don't duplicate what they're doing, but you kind of fit in and add this capability where
Yeah.
needed. So what were some of the challenges you faced in making sure, in connection with the APIs again, that Liquid Donate's own workflow aligned with the other systems it needed to communicate with? I think I read a little bit about this in one of, maybe on your website, about how there's certain challenges in making sure that the way, I guess, the different systems refer to things and how their workflows kind of mesh together, that was probably a bit of a challenge that you had to work through in the APIs. Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, of course. So we really design our system with intention. So one example is like we're partnering with Loop, a return management solution, where we know they are actually generating labels for return to warehouse. So in a way, we actually assume ourselves as a label generator. So I guess one challenge would be just understanding, I think before going into that, understanding their solution, understanding their system, and knowing like where exactly can we plug ourselves in. So in terms of Loop, it's really like looking at how do they handle return to warehouse, and then just plugging ourselves and sort of like in a way, we actually call ourselves during our Loop integration as a label generator, where but instead of just generating the label, there's a lot of back-end things going on there where we understand the items, match them to nonprofits, and really generate the label that goes directly to the nonprofit. So in terms of challenge, I would say it's like before that, more understanding workflow. How do we match the workflow? How do we make sure these are actually going to donations? Understanding, like, as a partner, as a retailers trust us to actually build a workflow that actually goes to donations. So, for example, if let's say these items are actually intended to go for donation, and it didn't. It actually goes to the warehouse. Really, we have to go in, understand their workflow, go into that, and really figure out how to do it. So it involves, I would say, it involves a lot of like operation, like talking to multiple partners as well, and really understanding each of the solution. For e-commerce, for example, we actually integrate as their return management solution. And actually, very recently, we actually have made it easy to a point where an e-commerce system that do not have a return management solution were able to actually integrate with us in just under 2 weeks. And we are now the e-commerce sole return solution, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned Kenmore as a really a pretty cool case study. I think you have some other fairly well-known brands involved or as customers. Can you name a couple more examples and explain a little bit about how they use your platform?
Of course, have you heard of Built Different?
Pardon me, what was it again?
Built Different?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like a t-shirt. Yeah. So they're also one of our customers, and we actually have their returns directly from the customers as well. So what they do is their customers actually request for return. We generate the label for them. There's no change in terms of the process, and the returns actually is directly shipped from the customer to the nonprofit. What's really cool about that is we actually reduce the shipping cost by 20%, 26% on average, but I think the highest was like 80 or 90% reduced shipping costs. And on average, we reduce shipping distance by 1,300 miles. I think it's super cool. We also have a very popular chocolate snacks manufacturer. I can't name drop them, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows them. So what's interesting about them is that they every year, since I think 2022 or 2023, they actually say, "This is the last time we're going to use you." They're like, "This is the last time we're going to use you." But every year they keep coming back and say, "We are the only disposition option they have." And to date, we actually donated, I think, more than 3 million packs of chocolate snacks to nonprofits who need them. And this is from retailers who say, "Hey, we don't need you next year. It's just this year."
You know, I didn't send these questions along in advance, but it occurs to me, we mentioned ESG reporting
Yeah.
earlier. So does that kind of manufacturer, have you seen evidence that, you are helping them with their ESG reporting in the sense of they have better data about these goods that otherwise might have been kind of lost out there in the world?
Yeah, of course. A room and board actually got B certified, and actually say we are the reason they got B certified earlier. I think initially they were planning to be B certified in, I would say, 2026 or 2027, but they were able to achieve B certification earlier just because they partnered with us. We were able to really donate them, give them better reporting, giving them better, donation, all this ESG reporting that enable them to be B certified. So that's, yeah.
So really shifting gears here, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit of a biographical kind of diversion here, or a segue.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up in a family that highly valued education. You wrote your first program at age 7.
Mm-hmm.
You kept programming throughout your childhood. You got a bachelor's degree in computer science at the University of Maryland. And then, if I have the sequence correct, you went to work in the family business, I think, which is
Yes.
an IT services firm in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
You worked for some other organizations too, but along the way, you also just got a master's 2 years ago in Carnegie Mellon's program for, it looks like essentially a program for tech entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
when you were pregnant with your second child. And it was shortly after that you became the founding engineer at Liquid Donate.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's a long-winded way of me asking or getting to the real question, which is that programming has been so central to your career in tech and your enthusiasm for what technology can do, but the jobs of programmers and software engineers are among those at most risk of being taken over by AI, which has already shown some amazing coding skills, albeit with some errors that people are pointing out.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how do you see AI changing software development, either for good or for ill?
So I would say really writing software it's not about just writing codes. It's also about designing the system and understanding trade-offs. I want to say like AI has been increasingly good and has done exceptionally well in really generating code quickly. It speed up my process. Like some of the things, like for example, mapping, for example, that is so easy, or creating like a crude operations. Those are so easy, but it used to take time to do that. I remember, like, I think just building crude would take like 1 day or 2 days, for example. And now it's like 5 or 10 minutes, and really automating like repetitive tasks and really accelerate our debugging. Like I'm using them. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm using them myself, but like like you said, part of me is actually happy. I learned things before AI came, so I got to make mistakes. I got to understand my mistakes. I got to really understand, like I made some really bad decisions, and I got to fix my mistakes, know what the trade-offs, know really like understand what is the best way of handling some things. I think the younger programmers, they definitely have it harder with AI really helping writing the code. These youngest programmer have to really they need to be, as I say, like, I think the word is senior engineer faster. So I don't necessarily think AI would replace good engineers, but AI could replace like mediocre ones. I remember at some point before AI came in, they were like, I should just be programmers because they make more money. I can just write codes all the time. But really, AI couldn't replace judgment calls that you can make. Sometimes we make a certain judgment calls that AI, like for me, I actually don't like the AI peer review, like AI peer reviewing your codes yet, because I think peer review has to be done by engineers to understand why we make certain decisions, why this thing makes certain decisions. So yeah, essentially all in all, I want to say like AI can't replace judgments. Younger programmers, they have to focus on really understanding why it's written this way. What is a better solution for that? Is there a better solution? What is the long-term effect of things? I think they have it harder, but I think if you love programming, you go really deep into it, you'll make it.
So it sounds like that would be your advice if for the Asia Azizes of 2026 who come to this industry with the same passion and talent for programming that you did, but it's obviously different career opportunities they're looking at, partly because of AI. So your advice, I guess, is to maybe to try to get to more like the engineer level as opposed to the
Yeah.
programmer. Yeah.
I would say like focus on the fundamentals, learn how system really works, learn how data flows, learn the reasoning. Because while tools can change, technologies can change, AI can improve, problem solving skills are really durable. There's so much that AI can do, but really you really need to understand like your infra. You need to understand why you built it this way, why you choose this stack, why you choose this certain decision. And that's something AI can't replace.
One of the things that impressed me when I first heard about Liquid Donate is that it's a clear example of how enterprise applications relate to and map things in the real world as opposed to like a utility, which admittedly it's working on something in the real world called a computer. But applications really kind of relate to what the average person can understand. And in some cases, these applications can really solve problems that are impossible to solve by other means. And
Uh-huh.
I know that you're a believer in using technology to address social problems. So, and you could say, besides being a reverse logistics platform, Liquid Donate is also in the business of the circular economy, trying to basically encourage reuse and recycling of goods and materials. So my real question here is, my final question is, what are some other ways application software can enable better sustainability practices? For example, maybe there are certain areas that are especially suited for improvement through software in the way that Liquid Donate works.
I would say like I think if we look into like the sustainable like triangle, reduce, reuse, and recycle, I'd say like our case is like a best in terms of reuse, but there's definitely more we can do. I think there are a lot of startups that are working on recycle part. So one, I think that is pretty cool is Refibered, where they actually help break down the textiles, making sure like, hey, we can actually reuse this thread, for example. So that's pretty cool in that sense. And I think the ones that we are not as strong at yet would be like on the reduce side, where we want to reduce waste at its source. So we can actually have all this data from Liquidonate, where we know like, hey, these are like your excess inventory, and really feed into the inventory optimization, so we can actually reduce waste at its source. And aside from that, I think one very cool solution that I hope someone would really build up on is really, so our founder, Disney, prior to Liquidonate, she actually built this food fight bento box where, like right now, with Liquidonate, we don't do like perishable food. But what bento box does is actually for restaurants, if they have like excess food at the end of the day, we know like those are really hard to handle because it's at the end of the day, there's like just probably 1 hour gap before store is closing. And there's a lot of unhoused people who actually need these foods. So really imagine having these food actually go to the unhoused community or simply anyone who needs them. I think that's a really good use. Like it's a good solution to really solve at its core. Like, and then we wouldn't have like a hunger problem anymore. So yeah, I think those are some of the things I've thought of.
I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you with future solutions. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Of course. Thanks so much, David. It's really great talking to you as well.
Thank you for listening to Enterprise Apps Unpacked, where we give the real story on the software that runs your business. To learn more about business applications, explore our content on searcherp.com. Find us on YouTube at our channel, Ion Tech. Subscribe to our podcast to receive the latest episodes as they drop. And if you liked what you heard today, give us a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Until next time.
Podcast programming and promotion by Kelsey Waddell. Podcast production and quality oversight by Anne Steshu. Music supplied by DP via Getty Images. This is an Informa Tech Target production.